Assalamu alaikum and good day. I am Mujahid M. Abdurrahman and this is CPE 109. Today, I will be reporting the introductory part of this topic, globalization and multicultural literacy, particularly highlighting the concept of globalization, global and multicultural literacy, and OECD Global Competence Framework. Our learning objectives for today's discussion include understanding the concept of globalization, global and multicultural literacy, and emphasize the needs and importance of being global and multicultural literate in a globalized world. And lastly, explain the concept of OECD Global Competence Framework. But before taking on the main discussion, have you ever wondered why 21st century teachers are encouraged to think globally? Or have you noticed that in our junior high, other countries' literatures are being integrated in our curriculum? For instance, if I'm not mistaken, our English 9 textbook that time entitled Anglo-American Literature. Same thing with Filipino 9 textbook which entitled Panitikang Asiano. So why is it so? Why is there a need to integrate other countries' literature in our curriculum? Well, the answer for that is simply we are now living in a globalized world. We ourselves are globalized. We are expected to deal with various cultures all around the world. Thus, there's a need for us to learn other cultures in the form of learning their literatures for us to be multiculturally and globally literate. In today's situation, geologic barriers or national borders can no longer hinder us from exploring outside world. Technology and its silent partner, globalization, are melting those borders and barriers, fusing all countries into one global society. So what is this globalization? According to Ritzer 2010 in his book Globalization the Essentials, globalization is a multidirectional flow of people, information, and things. Let's take a look at these pictures for us to understand what is meant by multidirectional flows. As you can see in this map, this is the world map, each countries or each continent is being connected or linked together by various linkages. This arrow can represent both people, informations, and things. People, for example, in the form of refugees or mga asylum seeker, or in the forms of migrant workers that migrate from one country to another country for work. And sa information naman, of course, there are lots of information in the internet that is connecting all around the world. So kahit sa Pilipinas ka lang, you would know some information from other countries like Korea or saan pa man yan. It is because we are linked together by this globalization. And lastly, sa product, of course, it is undeniable that every country is interdependently on economic from other countries like country giant like US and China. So nag-export tayo ng mga products of other countries, and at the same time nag-i-import din tayo. And that's export and import are multi-directional flows of products. So, to further understand the concept of this, Ritzler emphasized the word solid, liquid, and flows in illustrating globalization effect, by which he heightened that liquid flows but not solid. Let's take a look at the situation during order times to further understand the concept. During old days, every society is contained and secluded by geologic borders such as mountain ranges and vast ocean. Everything like people, information, and things like products or goods are solid and had no way of flowing. There were no import or exports that time. The reason for that includes technology was not yet advanced and people don't have enough ideas of the outside world. But sooner, when transportation technology was invented or when the age of technology came, and successfully operated, people began traveling out of their respective society. So these initially solid people who were secluded in their own society will now will now moves out of their society to other society, and that's because of technology and globalization. And the situation melted all geopolitical borders and people become globalized with the aid of technology. So yung mga tall mountains, yung mga vast oceans that secludes one society from other is now being addressed by the technology. We have transportation technology via planes, via um, MRT kung sa land or via ship. Yun yung naging reason for us to be able to close from our society to other or outside society, and that's eventually changed our situation from then, which were initially secluded tayo, into now na medyo globalized na. So today, having the internet, the media, and the transformation available and accessible, we really can interact with various people of diverse culture almost limitless. And this highlighted the importance of global and multicultural literacy. Kung noon, hindi natin kailangan itong global and multicultural literacy because we are dealing only with the people of whom are having the same cultures sa atin kasi 'di ba nasa-seclude tayo sa society lang natin. And because of this globalization where we can flows, we can travel all around the world, we can search the information from all around the world, we can watch, see the videos, the cultures of other from media all around the world, then meaning we are not only dealing with the people of having the same culture with us. Nakaka-deal na nakaka-interact na din tayo sa ibang mga tao of whom having different cultures from us. And this is why global and multicultural literacy highlight its importance. We simply need to be multiculturally literate because we are exposed to varieties of cultures. We can see other cultures on media, for instance, in terms of food. If we don't possess multicultural literacy, we might find it disturbing having watched people of other culture like Chinese eating bat or Thai people eating scorpion, which we should not do because we can't blame and judge them. It's their culture, and the only thing we can and should do is to appreciate such thing as cultural difference worth of respect. Apart from that, Bank's 1996 defined it as literacy that consists of skills and ability to identify the creator of knowledge and its interests, to rebuild assumptions of knowledge, view knowledge from diverse ethnic and cultural perspective, and to use knowledge to guide action that will create a human and just world, according to Boutique 2009. So, it is the ability to identify the creator of knowledge and its interests. Knowledge here means everything that is known. The definition simply says that it is the ability to recognize and appreciate the knowledge origin. Why is it so? For us to reveal or know the initially assumed knowledge. Let's say some sort of culture like chopstick. Being a multicultural literate, if you see someone eating with chopstick, your reaction would be, oh, Chinese yan, and they're eating like that because of this, because of that, because of this. Finish. If you had such reactions, if you reacted that way, then you probably had exercised your sense of multicultural literacy. In addition to that, both 2008 says that multicultural literacy is the ability to see knowledge in different cultural perspective. Because certain thing, knowledge or simply culture means a lot and it may differ for various cultural perspective. For instance, the two-fingered peace sign of the United States is actually an offensive gesture in England, Ireland, and Australia. So the aim of multicultural literacy here is to consider those difference in meaning of a certain knowledge or culture in different cultural perspective. In such a way, if you are multiculturally literate, you won't consider doing two-finger fist sign if you are in a country like Australia. But if you are in the Philippines, it would be okay. Or if you met an English or Australian friend, you won't be doing that certain gestures, and that's how you use your knowledge to guide your action for an effective and just interaction with others. Another literacy arose as a result of globalization is the global literacy. This literacy aims to address issues of globalization, racism, diversity, and social justice, as according to GUO 2014. So there are various issues in globalization. For example, globalization of people like asylum seeker or refugees. It is undeniable that we see in the media or in TVs or in videos that asylum seeker or refugees are not always welcome in other countries. For example, the refugees from Palestine or from Syria is not welcome in other countries just because of their country's origin. But if you considered other asylum seeker like refugees from Ukraine, they are very welcome in other countries, in other European countries. So, from the comparison of those refugees we have said earlier, we really can see that there is some sort of discrimination, racism, or a social injustices. And these are what global literacy is addressing. According to Ontario Ministry of Education 2015, a global citizen should possess the following. First, respect for human regardless of race, gender, religion, or political perspective. This is simply what do we call individual sensitivity. So to be global citizens, first, we should respect individuals regardless of who they are or their cultural backgrounds. Next, respect for diversity and various perspectives. So this is what referred to as cultural sensitivity. So dito papasok yung multicultural literacy. The next, promote sustainable pattern of living, consumption, and production. So this is referred to as economic sensitivity. And last, appreciate the natural world and demonstrate respect on the rights of all living things, or simply environmental sensitivity. So if we sum up for what is being meant by Ontario Ministry of Education 2015, a global citizen should be individually, culturally, economically, and environmentally sensitive citizen. So next is the OECD Global Competence Framework. So this framework consists of principles encompassing knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills. This is needed for us to be global competent. To be global competent, we should first understand and appreciate the perspective and worldviews of others. This dimension highlights that globally competent individual is willing and capable of considering global problems and other people's perspective and behaviors from multiple viewpoints. Second, engage in open, appropriate, and effective interaction across cultures. This dimension address appreciation of respectful dialogue, desire to understand the others with efforts to include marginalized ones. Third, take action for collaborative well-being and sustainable development. This dimension highlights the individual's readiness to respond to a given local, global, or intercultural issues. And lastly, examine local, global, and intercultural issues. So these dimensions highlights the skills of a certain individual for them to be able to examine local, global, and cultural issue. So if we sum up, to be global competent, we must know how to examine local, global, and intercultural issues. This is referred to as a skill. Then, by having those issues examined, we must exercise individual and cultural sensitivity to consider the perspective of the participating individual involved in our examined issue. Then by having all those knowledge that we have about certain individual, we must put it into action. We simply exercise individual and cultural sensitivity when interacting or communicating with others. Then lastly, we should be responsive and responsible to act upon addressing a given local, global, and intercultural issues. By having all of those considered, then we can be called a global competent individual. So, to sum up all our discussions, Let us consider this one. So number one, globalization gives rise to the existence of globalized world made possible by technology. Number two, globalized world gives rise to the emergence and importance of global and multicultural literacy. Three, multicultural literacy is the skills and ability to recognize, appreciate, and accept cultural differences and perspectives. Fourth, global literacy is the skills and ability aims to address issues related to globalization, individuality, culture, economic, and environment. Fifth, global and multicultural literacy is related as both aims to address differences in cultures to foster equity and realize a just world. Then lastly, OECD Global Competence Framework consists of principles encompassing knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills necessary to take action that promotes diversity, equity, and social justices. And that would be all. Thank you.